Once upon a time, I had a wooden box that held women's handkerchiefs from days gone by. The handkerchiefs were small linen squares with intricate embroidery and tatted lace edges. They were not the sort of handkerchiefs one would use to blow one's nose with. Rather, they were a female's companion to daub eyes in teary moments. You have likely seen old films or read historical novels where women carried such handkerchiefs. Stories from that time often had chivalrous men who would pull out their handkerchief to pass to a woman in their presence who was crying. Reading and watching displays of handkerchief use, one might say that the use of handkerchiefs was civilized. I suggest it was tradition and a ritual that brought comfort, even healing. A moment ago, we heard a reading from the book of Revelation, where after death, God is said to wipe away every tear from their eyes. This group of faithfully departed were a group of early Jesus followers who had suffered much because of their faith and the way they chose to live their life. During the days of the Roman Empire, persecution, crucifixion, imprisonment, exile, death at the hand of gladiator or wild animal in colosseums was common for Christ followers. Christ followers were a group that were often scapegoats. After all, Christianity was forbidden by Roman law. They were identified as opposing the empire, not worshiping the emperor as God, choosing not to participate in cultural rituals, but instead having weird rituals of their own. Much to the chagrin of the empire, Christ followers shared their resources, continued to gather for prayer, cared for the poor and the forgotten, and empowered the lowly with hope. The book of Revelation has Christian martyrs honored before God's throne after death. Death is written about as a reward after the perils and tribulations of earthly life. Before God and in the glory of God, those living through turmoil and persecution can rest their hope in the life to come. And their present tears, every tear, will be wiped away. I would love for present tears, every tear, to be wiped away. What I mean by this is that I relish a time when circumstances that make me want to ugly cry would cease. The circumstances and events that break my heart, disturb my spirit, and weigh heavy. There are many tears in our world. Much is lost daily. We grieve the death of loved ones, the loss of jobs, the lack of stability. We grieve the lack of peace, safe places for displaced and homeless, failing systems, increasing temperatures, and sweeping changes. The world and its people carry much grief, many tears. To hear the words, the promise, God will wipe away all tears from their eyes, speaks to a change from what currently is. I imagine a place where everyone's needs are met, where all are welcome, where fear melts, where there is joy in living, where relationships are whole, where tears of joy, tears from laughing so hard, are the norm. The Bible appears in many translations. One of the newest is the First Nations version of the New Testament. Curators of this version have this unique and beautiful way of translating the text from Revelation. Like a shepherd watches over his sheep, He will guide them to springs of life-giving water, and the Great Spirit will perform the wiping of tears ceremony for each of them. Is this not a beautiful thought? The Great Spirit will perform the wiping of tears ceremony for each of them. In my last parish, there was a woman who on most Sundays, at some point between the sermon and communion, would have tears that freely streamed down her cheeks. The tears came once she had settled, attuned to the sacred space, opened her heart. It was the space she felt closest to God, a place where she felt at peace, at one with the son she had lost years before. It was a safe place to grieve, to rejoice, to let it all out. I always appreciated this woman's faith, shown by the way she lived her life, and how Sunday tears were an expression of an undying love. She was not embarrassed to shed tears in front of others. She was not hindered by what others thought. The tears were part of her weekly offering, a giving of herself from the very depths of her being. They were a prayer of love and healing. In her coming to sacred space each week and shedding tears of undying love, the Great Spirit reached out for the wiping of tears ceremony, touching and healing her, so that she could go back into the world sharing love and hope for another week. Earlier we heard the words, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." The First Nations version of the text reads, "Creator's blessing rests on the ones who walk a trail of tears, for he will wipe the tears from their eyes and comfort them." Blessing rests on the one who walks a trail of tears. This morning, I am going to own this text, and I'm going to invite you to walk a trail of tears too. Washington Irving wrote, "There is a sacredness in tears. They are not the mark of weakness, but of power. They speak more eloquently than 1,000 tongues. They are the messengers of overwhelming grief, of deep contrition, and of unspeakable love." In this sacred space, where I feel safe, where I feel belonging, where I feel like I am being embraced, I'm going to give myself permission to participate in the Great Spirit's wiping of tears ceremony, meaning tears may very well stream down my face as I express my undying love. An undying love for those who have died, for those who are grieving, for those who are sick, for those wrestling with mental illness, those living in tents, those fleeing war or separated from family, those in refugee camps, those whose futures are uncertain, for the multitude of people who I carry in my heart, for a hurting world, for all the things, people, systems, situations that I cannot fix. Today I cry from my heart, undying love, tears that are prayers. The box of handkerchiefs that I had once belonged to my grandmother and grandmother's, great-grandmothers. One of my grandmothers had a ritual where in intimate moments she would look me in the eye and carefully stroke my face as she tucked the hair from my face behind my ears. She didn't do it very often, but I remember how I felt. I sense that same feeling when I consider the Great Spirit and the wiping of tears ceremony. In that moment, all is well. All is quiet. All is pure love. All is healed. All is whole. This morning, I thank you for coming to honor your loved ones, for taking time from your busy lives to pause and remember, to open your hearts and shed a tear or two of undying love. My prayer, my tears of undying love for you, are that you feel God's presence and care for you, that you experience healing and wholeness, that for this week, the undying love you have felt will be lived through every moment of each day. This sacred space is here, today, tomorrow, and the next. This space is offered to you with love. You are always welcome. As a community, we welcome tears. Tears that are our expression of undying love. A love that prays for the healing of the whole world. May this be so.